Thank you all for coming out. I'm honored to have. It was actually a pretty nice turnout for one of these types of talks. The talk in question is called What I Learned from My Wife's Business. My name is Brook Schaaf. I have a background in affiliate marketing that goes back to 2000. I worked in-house as an affiliate manager at Zappos, Shoes.com, Edmunds.com. My brother and I then started an agency called Schaaf Partner Centric. We started another company called FMTC, formerly known as For Me to Coupon. Both of those companies are alive and well. I stepped down from day-to-day operations about a year and a half ago, after which time I got married and then got involved in my wife's business. So this is a picture of me and my wife. We went to Machu Picchu earlier this year. It was never anything I expected in life, but I ended up marrying an entrepreneur. This is her business, prepdish.com. We sat down and did a dry run of this presentation together earlier this week. I was very touched that she was interested in seeing the presentation before I gave it, but she told me that she really just wanted to make sure I did not give out any information she did not approve of. The business then, I can't go into exact detail, but I can tell you that PrepDish is a healthy online subscription planning service. It does 6 figures in top line revenue. And it's got a 5-figure email list. It's got 4 figures of paid subscribers. And it's been around for about 4 years. So she churned out this business for a couple of years before she ever made any money. And then I came on board pretty much at a time that she was scaling things up. And so this presentation is kind of a personal experience share on some of the software systems she works with that I've engaged with. I don't have anything to sell except a meal plan if you'd like to buy one. But I am pleased to be able to sort of share what I've learned along the way. And I'm very happy to answer any specific questions you might have about kind of this ecosystem. More on the ecosystem presently. So for those who aren't familiar, this business follows a very typical business plan. On the upper left-hand side, you see the homepage of her site. You can link to a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription. She also recently added a premium rate. She sells monthly meal plans for $14, yearly plans for $99, and a premium plan for $149. As you might imagine, there's a lot of different promos. So right below that is a lead page, and you can see there's sometimes it might be a discounted subscription, it might be an extended free subscription, that kind of thing. Once you're subscribed, you get a weekly email with the gluten-free and paleo meal plans. Not everyone is a gluten-free or paleo subscriber, it's mostly moms, but that certainly fits in with most people's eating. And then in the bottom right is the picture of what you get. You can actually print them out, so it's a grocery list, and then the cooking instructions, and then the heating and serving instructions. In abstract, the model follows this pattern. You have sort of a community, so she has a very active Facebook group, very traditional stuff, some super users, always posting pictures of the food that they make, very involved. A lot of free information, so there's free meal plans. If you go to the website and enter your email, you'll get a free paleo plan and a free gluten-free plan. And then you'll be subscribed, of course, to the email list, and special offers will come off of that list. Those special offers might be they might be a discount, or what's called a trigger or a tripwire product. So that would be something where we sell it to you for $1 or for $4, where it normally costs $14 or $7 for a month. And we get your credit card, and then we can renew at the higher rate. So very traditional strategy. And the key thing you have to remember, of course, is in order for there to be recurring billing, you have to provide recurring value. Not just in terms of the content, but also in terms of the community, in terms of the customer service. If you read the best practice books, really you want to build that in. And one thing that people like about this service is that there's kind of a movement to it, because you're living a higher quality life when you're preparing home cooked foods as opposed to eating out all the time or eating a lot of processed foods. So Allison really believes in what she's doing, and her background is as a chef and a dietitian. Now we come onto the sort of the software part of the presentation. I'm curious to ask, who here has seen this slide before from chiefmartech.com? Only a couple people. I see this a lot in presentations, and it just really boggles my mind. There's about 3,500 companies on here. A few appear twice. I think there's 3,900 total logos, according to the guy's blog. And he has all these categories broken out. The one that's most important for us is the one that's called marketing automation and campaign or lead management. But the reason I wanted to share this presentation, this particular slide, is because the number of choices that you're faced in terms of the software ecosystem is, at least to me, absolutely overwhelming. My brain is just not going to process 3,500 different companies that we could work with. Maybe not 3,500 for my wife's business, right? But even if it's a tenth of that number, because we're not like really a robust enterprise business, that's a lot of choices that you're faced with. And whenever you're faced with choices like this, you have to keep in mind the law of diminishing returns, which is to say that for any work input, I'm going to kind of reach a sweet spot, and then after that sweet spot, it's going to be too many cooks in the kitchen. And that is true for, I think, selecting the software, and it's true for any software that you use. I'll get into a couple examples of that for the specific software tools that we have worked with. The three kind of functions I want to cover today, because there's too much to cover entirely, so I don't get into the marketplace stuff or advertising buys that we do, are the back end. And you can read these off like domain registration, the hosting SSL, our CMS, some stuff like landing page generators, the e-commerce and content delivery, which is really the heart of her business and the most important software choices and interactions that she does. So billing, the credit card subscription aspects, the marketing, what are called marketing automation components. I have a couple of slides on those. And then finally, customer service, which is very important because this is not sort of a fly-by-night anonymous business. This is very much her personality, her face. So that quality standard is very important to her. So to the first component, the domain registration, SSL stuff, the Lightbox. This slide's a little ironic because the two bottom logos, the GoDaddy and Ninja pop-ups, are the least important. I'll just mention them here in passing. But their logos were so big, this is the only way I could fit them onto the page. So that's, in a way, some clever marketing on their part. GoDaddy is the domain registrar. I don't have a lot to say about domain registrars. I'm not particularly fond of GoDaddy's backend. It seems very unupdated to me. Ninja Pop-ups is a Lightbox. I have actually a slide on that later. It's the little email grabber that pops up. It's a one-time purchase in the WordPress ecosystem. And that's one thing that you really want to keep in mind when you're buying software like this is sometimes you'll find stuff that you can buy just once for $20, $30, maybe $60. Sometimes you'll find stuff that's a subscription that's $5 or $10. I'm not saying that the subscription is inherently bad. Most of these products are subscriptions that we work with. We have recurring monthly fees for the business. But sometimes you can save a few dollars by buying something that you really buy once and doesn't need to be updated for a long time. The more important components are WP Engine, WordPress, and LeadPages. So WordPress, who here has a WordPress site out of curiosity? Quite a many. I was never a part of the WordPress ecosystem, even though my agencies and the two companies I have are both based on WordPress. I never did much with them. WordPress has really been interesting for me to get my hands on. It's free, and the company makes its money by, the founder has WordPress.com, and there's WordPress.org. All the stuff from WordPress.org is free, and then WordPress.com does hosting, things like that. There's some politics around that. I have only seen those from a distance. I'm not involved in them, although I know a couple of the political folks. From a user perspective, really great content management solution. I've really had a good time, really enjoyed WordPress. A couple quirks to figure out. There's a nice site called WP Beginner that I like. He actually presented a little earlier today. A lot of free information out there, a lot of video tutorials and the like. And then you can buy all these plugins. I think there's literally hundreds of thousands of plugins to purchase. So not too many comments there, but I will say WordPress has been a very good backend for where Allison's site has been. I don't see any need to change away from WordPress in the future. WP Engine, we switched to late last year, not just because one of their executives, David Vogelpool, cornered me at a New Year's party, but because one of the plugins that we work with called Memberium has some very specific hosting requirements. And WP Engine is one of a handful of companies that can fulfill these technical requirements. I'm not technical enough to give details on those, but I can point you in the direction if you're interested. WP Engine has been great. It's pretty expensive relative to other hosting companies. I think we pay $30 a month for their lowest level plan, which is something like one domain, up to 25,000 visits based on their categories. But it's really easy to get an SSL certificate. Their customer service, their chat in particular, has been really good. And they have a really, really good migration plugin. And they have a great feature for staging. A quick comment on this. So you can copy your whole live site, to a staging area, and then you can play with it any way you want. You can import new apps. You could do any kind of short codes you want and see how those break or don't break the site. But a word of warning, I have not successfully deployed from the staging server to the live server. So do not do this. I'm going to say straight up. I think that the copy on their website might not quite be entirely correct because it's supposed to reference back the tables that are on the live site. If the live site tables have changed since it's been on staging, it's not supposed to overwrite those. This has not been my experience. The data that I had, one of her employees, one of Allison's employees, updated some blog posts and stuff that all got clobbered. So live to staging, great. I would advise against moving from staging to live. That might be something that gets fixed in the future. I've not since heard. I just simply don't use it anymore. Ninja Pop, as I mentioned, the Lightbox, real important function because you want to grab the emails to have the email list to market to, and this is a good way of getting those. A lot of providers, a lot of apps will help to grab the Lightbox, and then you just disable it on certain pages. LeadPages. I am less involved with LeadPages, a really crucial part of the business though, because if you're on a podcast, for example, so if Allison does an interview or she has any kind of special offer, really neat integration with WordPress. So it can be prepdish.com/special offer. You go to that page, you see the coupon code, you click through it, it takes you to the order form, and you can purchase pretty readily. LeadPages has been pretty good. There's a lot of functionality around building the pages. It's hard to get stats out of the pages, oddly. So if you go to one page, there's a lot of stats available, but you can't export all the stats, which I find kind of unusual. And I submitted a customer support ticket for this a little while ago, and it's just not a feature that they currently have. So I can't speak to the other stuff like ClickFunnels and whatnot, but I would suggest exploring that, exploring the different options there pretty more thoroughly than we did. But in terms of like getting the pages up and running, it's pretty good. It's got nice functionality. And that takes us on to the e-commerce, the CRM, and the content delivery portion. The heart of this presentation is really around Infusionsoft. And Infusionsoft is a plugin that we use called Memberium. I have just a couple quick notes on the bottom ones. WePay actually doesn't have a slide. WePay is Infusionsoft's payment platform. So we pay about 30 cents per transaction plus 2.9%, which I understand is a pretty competitive rate, at least for the size merchant that we are. It's been nice. One word of caution to keep in mind is it can be difficult to get off of your payment processor. So we used to be on a system called Cratejoy, and Cratejoy is really nice. Cratejoy targets physical good delivery. So if you have like a beer of the month club or something that can be emailed more easily, they'll do that and help out with fulfillment and all that kind of stuff. And the recurring bill is really good. Really like their user interface. It did not sync properly with MailChimp, which was the email service provider we were using at the time. MailChimp I'm a big fan of. Really like both of those software companies, but her business grew to a point where doing the syncing manually was a little bit too much of a headache. We kind of got our toe caught when we tried to leave because we couldn't move our credit cards off of Stripe. Cratejoy actually was willing to give us permission to do so Cratejoy wasn't trying to kind of cage us in or anything, but we couldn't move Stripe's not a payment processor with Infusionsoft, which I think is a little unusual, but for whatever reason they're not. So we leave those recurring billing clients on Cratejoy. Not the worst thing in the world, but kind of annoying. And so it's kind of ironic then we sort of like went right into Infusionsoft's payment processor. But if I were to do this again in the future, I'd probably do my research and pick a third-party, very neutral payment processor that could go with me wherever I was in terms of like the software vendors. So a quick note on Systic. This is another company that's an example of the app. And I really like these guys actually. I found them in the App Store. A lot of people will do the pricing tables, the classic stuff, right? So monthly, yearly, premium. A quick note on this, aside from the software component, there's a book called Persuasion. The author actually was a keynote at Affiliate Summit a few years ago. Really, really good book to read in terms of like human persuasion triggers. There's a blogger named Derek Halpern. He has a site called Social Triggers. A good one to subscribe to if you're interested in subscription services like this. And the idea is that there's something magical about the 3 pricing levels, especially if the most expensive pricing level is significantly higher. And the idea there is that if somebody's uncertain about buying and the pricing level is higher, that pricing level is highest makes everything else look inexpensive in comparison. don't tell Sean and Missy, the conference organizers, this, but they actually did this a few years ago with the affiliate summit pricing levels, totally following the same playbook. You got to create some product you fulfill for the highest level, and they were kind of annoyed because just like I think just a few people bought the very highest level, and they had to do a lot of work to fulfill on that they weren't thrilled with. So be careful that you don't do something that you don't want to fulfill on. Here we have a pretty good value for the premium stuff. It's basically additional content, broken out recipes, stuff like that. And so far so good. We've had we didn't even soft launch it. We just kind of put it up on the site. I guess you'd call that a soft launch. And we unexpectedly got a couple early subscriptions that just went up last week. And then on to Infusionsoft. We got Infusionsoft is a very powerful system. And my experience with Infusionsoft has been very mixed. Who here is on Infusionsoft? Any of their properties? Just one. So Infusionsoft is fascinating to me. It's a very powerful, very big ecosystem. I think it's like a $100 million company based on some numbers that weren't verified I saw online. Very big company. They do their own expo every year. Very powerful. So they have the CRM. They're an email service provider. They'll send their emails for you. They do all the e-commerce, so they can do the initial billing. And then they do the subscription rebilling as well. The word of caution I would have about Infusionsoft is that it's a very the UI is not great, and I'll get into this more momentarily. So here you can see a lot of products. You can create a lot of products on the back end. Here you see some old trigger products. I won't get into that, but it's sort of it was sort of a connection that we put up before that we've since moved away from toward promotion codes. And then this is an order form. A quick tip on Infusionsoft, by the way, if you ever happen to be on the back end or you're spying on a competitor who is on their back end, there's a trick you can use to spot all the pricing. If you create a new product in Infusionsoft, you have they automatically appear in a universal shopping cart that you have. And a lot of people have the same product at different price points. And so that's going to be automatically visible unless you hide it on the Infusionsoft backend. So if you do a Google search for articles about that, you can find it. And I actually removed all of our products because if you have a savvy customer or, again, probably most likely a competitor. The shopping cart naturally is pretty ugly looking. So the order forms have a much cleaner look and they're mobile responsive. Infusionsoft added that I think late last year. Contacts are the heart of contacts is the tags. You can kind of see them down at the bottom. You can create a great many tags, behavioral tags, and then you can market to lists based on these tags. So this is an email beta tool that they launched, I think sometime in the spring of this year. It's pretty nice. It makes it really easy to do nice, clean emails. The functionality is limited, but it works for us pretty well. And then you do a lot of merge techniques and things like that. This is an example of the marketing automation stuff you can build in, so you can send timed, delayed emails to customers, things like that. This is where it gets very involved, and I recommend hiring a consultant if you're new to the ecosystem. If you do hire a consultant, one thing that's kind of funny, a lot of consultants will post screenshots of work that they've done, and one guy posted this crazy involved screenshot that it was sort of like what you see below, but it was like dozens of items all connected to each other. And I said to myself, what are all these items that are connected to each other? And I zoomed in, and they were all just little dummy items that he connected through arrows to make it look like he had done this super involved, very special campaign. Needless to say, we did not hire that guy. This is part of the heart of the power. So it's very involved. These are a lot of moving parts. They break. They especially break because the campaigns reference something called action sets, which are found elsewhere. And it can be a little bit mind-numbing sometimes to track stuff down if you have a very involved campaign. It feels like sometimes you're inside the middle of an M.C. Escher painting. It all sort of makes sense, and you can sort of get from one side to the other, but it sort of doesn't make any sense. Something else I'll say about Infusionsoft is that their customer service is actually quite good. I spent many, many hours on chats with the Infusionsoft customer service team. Some customer service reps, as you imagine, are better than others. So if you are in a customer service chat and somebody tells you that something can't be done, I hate to say it, but it's not necessarily true. And I'm coming up on trouble. I'm going to try and rush through these last ones. Memberium connects Infusionsoft to WordPress. So on WordPress, Memberium references tags associated with the different contacts. There's a password that can be assigned, and then the contacts can access different pages based on their membership levels. And the membership levels are informed by the tags. So Memberium can be very involved. And from the outside coming in, I talked to a couple of friends involved in the Infusionsoft community, and they said, hands down, Memberium is the one to use. Customer service has been really great with these guys, and they're kind of a company, I think they're a couple of years old at this point, but they have sort of that life and that verve of a younger company that's quite strong. So my experience with Memberium has been quite good. A lot of different functionality you can do, and they'll also plug into other tools called like LearnDash. So if you have an educational site, you can work with them to drip out content, give access to the different pages, etc. And here's just an example of kind of a back-end site. And then on the left-hand side, you can see the content that's available. And on the same page, you can make different content available to different subscriber levels. So finally, in terms of sort of the CRM stuff, quick note on Infusionsoft, quick note on WP Curve. WP Curve is a company a lot of people haven't heard of, but it's a really interesting business model. It gives you free access to unlimited WordPress questions for a rate of somewhere, you probably would pay, I think, $70 to $150-ish per month. You can have multiple multiple tickets open at the higher levels. And the idea here is that stuff you might not know yourself that you could probably research, but it might take many hours of research. Somebody who's really in the WordPress community might know off the top of their head. And so you can ask a question about like an app you would want to sign up for, something like that, and they would provide this information back to you. It's also the kind of subscription that you might forget that you have, so a month might go by and you don't open up any tickets. And honestly, I don't know that their business would work out otherwise, because if you do have tickets that open up, it can be a lot of time on their side with the back and forth. So my experience with WP Curve has been positive. Justin, they're based in Austin, right? No, maybe not. Infusionsoft and FuseDesk are the other companies I wanted to mention. Here again, you see this is one of my test accounts. Again, you see the tags here, so the customer service person will come in. The tags can initiate sequences. You can also initiate sequences and action sets directly. This slide has nothing to do with the presentation, but I thought it was really interesting data, because when I was going through this, I'm like, well, how many people are working with Gmail and other email services? So this is all the Prep-ish emails sorted by usage. And this kind of reflects some other experiences I've had. It just amazes me that Gmail dominates. And something that's funny is Gmail, a lot of people don't like, because there's the promo tab, there's the different tabs. And not everybody uses those, but I think that most people tend to. And I saw a really interesting study that said they saw an open rate decline of less than 2%, which kind of made sense to me, because if somebody's getting an email they don't really care about anyway, they're probably not going to open it anyway. But I will go into like my promotion tabs and sort of seek stuff out pretty regularly. So, that's kind of a damper on email marketing, but Allison installs really good open rates on all the content that she sends. As you might imagine, people are paying for it and they want to kind of see it. So the fact that it's Gmail and then Yahoo and everybody else is 8% still on Hotmail is very interesting to me. Quick note on Gmail while we're on the topic. My favorite hack that I've discovered is if you add a plus sign. Who knows this hack, by the way? Adding the plus sign. About third of the audience. I didn't know this, and I've been baited in by the different listicles that you see on Facebook sometimes about the wonderful life hacks. I've been disappointed to find that the ultimate speaker you create is by putting your iPhone on speaker in like a cup and then having that echo out. But this one I stumbled across is pretty darn good. And the reason I like this so much is because when I do testing, I want to receive the email back. So I don't want to send it to test@test.com, which probably has passwords to every subscription service in the world from somebody on the back end doing testing, or exitY.com. I want to receive the email back. So these all go back to my Gmail accounts. This also worked for logging into WordPress through Memberium, but bizarrely, I want to warn you, it broke a couple weeks ago, and I submitted a ticket to customer service, and they said, well, hey, the plus sign seems to be breaking on the back end. So it's one of those things that I thought worked 100% and may not work 100%. But just in terms of doing the tests, I do the date, A through Z, etc. Hopefully I'm not testing through Z. Works like a charm, get the email out, and then it's also super easy in Infusionsoft to look up all those accounts and delete them later. I'm testing purchases. So I'm going to go in, if I create a premium account, I want to make sure that I might make sure that a coupon code works. The coupon code you can usually see because you have it in the shopping cart. I want to make sure that like a link works. So I might be testing a referral link because Infusionsoft has a built-in affiliate program as well. Or I might be testing like buys from our own Facebook traffic or from any of the landing pages that we have. I want to make sure that a certain sequence somebody gets initiated into is working. So a lot of testing. It's constant. It's ongoing. Not every day, but likely at least a couple tests a week. And then finally, FuseDesk. So FuseDesk is oddly the only customer service ticketing system I found that was really integrated with Infusionsoft. Zendesk has kind of some additional plugin that seems to work, and but FuseDesk, I actually met these guys at the Memberium conference earlier this year, really plugs in. So in FuseDesk, if you add something, you can tag, it immediately connects it to a user. If it doesn't connect it to an existing user in Infusionsoft, you can create a new account. So really good experience with these guys. It's a little pricier, so you pay $40 a seat to $60 a seat. I think they have the pretty standard three levels. Good customer service, really good functionality, and we had to integrate this because Allison just hired a customer service rep for her company. So the old customer service rep used to be managing it out of the GoDaddy email, like the info ad address. I can't believe she did this because that interface to me is just pure torture to integrate with. If you're just doing, email reply, it works okay, but when you get back and forth and emails have the same titles, it is a headache. Great ticketing system. So I'm really looking forward to expanding the usage of this. And finally, to wrap it up with three very specific things that I've learned. First, you are facing significant choices when you choose software. And unfortunately, you're going to be making these choices in probably a partial vacuum. So my background is as an agency. I feel that I have, even just through kind of legacy knowledge, a real good feel for the cultures and the technical capabilities of the different affiliate tracking platforms like Impact Radius, ShareASale, Rakuten LinkShare, CJ by Conversant, all of those guys. That's been really most of my career. This is sort of babe in the woods stuff for me. And so I've gotten some really good advice, I've gotten some really bad advice, and that advice is really going to have a big impact on future hours that the company has to invest. At the same time, you got to make the choices because I don't think you'll be able to do a thorough amount of research with all the options that are out there. And this image, by the way, is I think there's a punk band called Face to Face. So when I Googled big choices, this is what came up. Once you've integrated with these software platforms, one thing to really keep in mind, and this will actually influence the choice a little bit, is that the software is not going to be able to do everything for you. And I'll give you a very specific example. Infusionsoft, somewhat oddly, in my view, doesn't have a ready way to prorate the value of existing subscriptions. So if you have a subscription service, you probably want people to upgrade, right? Your churn might be like, somebody might churn off the monthly thing after a few months. You want to get them on a yearly thing. And if they're, let's say they signed up for $99 and they have a half year left, ballpark $50, you can't automatically, without custom programming, assign that value of $50. And so I really tried to find a lot of sort of technical workarounds, and I eventually came to the conclusion, in part because this is what Memberium told me that they actually do, is it initiates a process and a customer service rep manually puts those actions through. So in a way you could say, well, that's inefficient, but you're only going to reach there's going to be sort of the last mile equivalent with the online software stuff. And I have found in my own experience, it's easy to go around chasing my tail by pretending that doesn't exist, but it's always going to exist. Some human being's going to have to interface with the system at some point. And finally, and somewhat ironically for me, don't be afraid to get help. And I say it's ironic because my background is largely in providing agency services, which provides exactly this help in affiliate management. When I entered this system, I thought, well, hey, I'll play around with this and I'll play around with this. But there's so many different functions that you have to master. One is, you got to understand the software ecosystem. What can all these different software functions, do? What do you need them to do? What can they do? What are the different costs? Can some stuff be negotiated, et cetera, et cetera? And there's going to be people in the ecosystem who know that stuff, who can readily answer those questions for you to a good degree of confidence. Beyond that, it's also a lot of work. If you're doing media buys, I think media buys ongoing are a lot of work. There's negotiations, there's probably content customization, there's creative optimization, et cetera, et cetera. And so my strong advice to anyone in the field, and advice that I'm starting to sort of take, is partial out all these different work functions and whatever role you have, make the highest, best use of your time, and be glad for everyone else who can be involved in growing the business with you. And I would be happy to take any questions you might have. Sir?
A question on the Infusionsoft email instead of the new functionality they have. How would you rate that in terms of like the analytics and customization of fields and triggering emails? Is it more like a constant contact on the lower end, or more like an exact target on the top end, higher end?
Great question. And so I might give a partial answer. It's kind of from my viewpoint. In terms of the sort of the functionality, so on the creative side, it's I would say probably on the lower end for customization stuff. You can still import, kind of custom creative. And they had one they had an old school email builder, and then also custom stuff that you could do. In terms of the send stuff, it seems like the delivery is pretty good. They added, interestingly, a new category called marketable unengaged. And what that means is that somebody who hasn't interacted with any of your emails in 4 months. But you can still email because they haven't unsubscribed. I'm sorry, do I have time for one more question after this? I beg your pardon, I thought I had a little more time. In terms of analytics, you can do a lot of tagging. So if anybody clicks off the buttons, you can tag them, and then those tags can initiate different sequences for more emails, things like that. In terms of kind of analytics on what gets sent, I would say, from my experience, it's pretty bare bones, and a lot of the value in the Infusionsoft ecosystem comes from different plugins. So I have found that Infusionsoft has been surprisingly not so strong in terms of being able to look at a lot of that stuff. It's easy to see how many contacts you have by the tags, people who are on the different campaigns, but in terms of kind of, and you get open rates and things like that. But in terms of some of the more advanced stuff, my background is not as an email marketer, but from what I've heard from other people, that could be stronger. Sorry, one more question? Somebody over here? No? I might have missed it. All right, thank you all very much.